Hi everyone, and welcome to part 2 of my video, In Like Flynn, Errol Flynn and his wicked, wicked ways. We'll see how life catches up with Errol Flynn, both thematically and literally, in part 2. Well, all of this debauchery eventually caught up with him in 1942 when two girls accused him of statutory rape on his yacht, the Zaka. By the way, this yacht is very interesting and has a history. I think it was purchased several years ago and refurbished, and you can actually rent this yacht out. The famous Errol Flynn love boat, you can actually rent it out. There's a photograph of Errol Flynn with a very young wife, whose name escapes me, sitting in the galley of this yacht with Orson Welles and Rita Hayworth. This girl that he married was about 19 years old. He would eventually marry another girl, his last wife, and that girl was 15 years old. That would have seriously got him in the Me Too movement. That would have got him in trouble, and his career would have been on the line with that one. At any rate, these two girls accused him of statutory rape. At one point, one of the girls got up and testified that they were laying on the deck and looking up at the stars and the moon, and Errol Flynn whispered in her ear, you know, that moon would look so much better through a porthole. And then just all pandemonium broke out in the 1942 courthouse. You just didn't talk about things like that back then in public. My goodness. And but what happened? This is where the In Like Flynn comes from. He was acquitted of all charges. The jury was starstruck, to say the least. They acquitted him of all charges, kind of like Fatty Arbuckle, you know. I'm so sorry this happened to you, and we'll acquit you of all charges. You're completely innocent, I'm sure, yeah, despite your history and your background and blah, blah, blah. So they acquitted him of all charges, and the papers dubbed it In Like Flynn. Like, yeah, despite all this evidence, despite these two girls willing to come forward really bravely when they were about 16 to testify against you, yeah, just rolled off your back. Good old Errol Flynn gets away with it again. After the trial, Flynn began making a bunch of war movies. It was 1943, and he had his own production company. He made, with varying success, his own production company produced something called Uncertain Glory in 1944, and this was not a success. And post-war, he made a comedy, which I think he would have been good as a comedian, called Never Say Goodbye, and was opposite Eleanor Powell. And it was also not a success because I guess people didn't really see him as a comedian. He made a series of unsuccessful movies, decided to give up his Hollywood career at the end of the 40s and go to Europe. And he made a few movies in Europe, thrillers, the story of William Tell, Dark Avenger, these type of things, but these were all varying successful films. He really didn't, he wasn't the big star that he had been in the late 30s and to mid 40s. He returned to Hollywood in 1957 and made Istanbul. He also starred with his friend Tyrone Power and Ava Gardner in the unforgettable The Sun Also Rises. And it was clear when he made this movie, as it was with Tyrone Power, both of them were way beyond their golden years. They looked far older than they were. I think both of them were in their late 40s. They were far older looking, and everyone was sort of disillusioned, but the film is achingly poignant and was one of his few successes at this time, because he would literally be dead 2 years later. So he married a girl, I think she was 15. I'm pretty sure she was 15 when he married her. And her name was Patricia Waymore. And he stayed married. He was married to Patricia until his death. He had been married to the woman that was on the boat in that photograph, Nora Eddington. And he had had 2 daughters with her. And with Lily D'Amata, he'd had a son named Sean Flynn. Sean became a photojournalist during the Vietnam War, and he disappeared in Cambodia in 1970, and he was never seen again. They never found his body. I thought that was really sad and poignant. So I think he had one of his daughters, Rory, was a pretty well-known actress. She in a TV series called Zoe, and
Luke Flynn,
his grandson, was also an actor. He's actually really cute. I don't know what he looks like now, but so Errol Flynn. He died the way he lived, throwing a party in his hotel room while he was literally dying from a heart attack. I'm going to read this part of my book. Flynn liked to drink. Seriously, he liked to drink a lot. He used to carry 2/5 of vodka on the set with him and get himself plastered between takes. When the studio banned him from bringing booze to the set, he injected oranges with alcohol and ate his way to intoxication instead. Today we call this alcoholism. Back then, when Flynn did it, it was called interesting. More interesting were the rumors of his taking male lovers as well as female. A charge that has been hotly denied by those who knew him. Biographer David Brett, who wrote a poison pen book about Flynn, insisted that he swung both ways. 2 of his supposed conquests were Ross Alexander, who killed himself, and Tyrone Power. That shocks me a little. Tyrone Power is in my second book. Brett wrote that Power fell passionately in love with Flynn. Oops, not a good thing. But for the Cavalier Flynn, it was all just physical. Well, of course it was. Yeah. So I'm going to read to you how Flynn died. Forgot to mention this little anecdote that Flynn actually writes about in My Wicked, Wicked Ways. He was great friends with the great profile, John Barrymore, they were great drinking buddies because they were both gone alcoholics. And when John Barrymore died, he was at the Cock and Bull, which was a bar in Hollywood, and with some friends, and he claimed that the friends and he his friends kidnapped John Barrymore's body from the morgue and set the body up in Flynn's house, sitting up on a bar stool in his bar. I have a hard time believing this, but he said when he came home, there was the body of John Barrymore there with his hand around a drink, and that he nearly had a heart attack then when he saw it. And I was like, yeah, I somehow don't think this happened, but okay, you go, Mr. Flynn. Anyway, here's an accounting from my book of how he died. He was married to Patricia Waymar when in 1959 he met a 15-year-old ingenue named Beverly Andlin. The two were in talks with director Stanley Kubrick to star together in the film version of Vladimir Nabokov's controversial novel about man-child love, Lolita. Yeah, that would have been perfect for Flynn. He was too ill for the flight back to America and was taken to a friend's apartment where, in true Flynn style, he threw a party. A good time was had by all, and he died before the ice had melted in the drinks, having retired to the bedroom where he had gone to rest. No one would have expected anything less of Errol Flynn. Oh, pardon me while I go die in my bedroom. I'm having a bit of a heart attack, excuse me. So, yes, that's how he died, having a party. Not going to the doctor, trying to find out what's wrong with me. Yeah, he died of a big old massive heart attack because he smoked constantly and he was an alcoholic. And for all I know, he took drugs. I mean, they had drugs back then. Cocaine, heroin, they had a lot of drugs back then. You want to know something else interesting? Check out what happened after Flynn was at the morgue. See picture. Check out what happened after Errol Flynn went to the morgue. Strange stories seem to follow Errol even after death. Clem MacDonald, the coroner present for Flynn's autopsy, could talk a tale that has to be one of the most bizarre legend yet. According to Glenn, the official cause of death was deep breath, myocardial infarction, coronary thrombosis, whatever. And there's other words in there. And basically a heart attack, okay? But also with degeneration of the liver from cirrhosis, portal cirrhosis of the liver, and diverticulosis of the colon. And I don't even want to know what that is. The pathologist noticed several warts on the tip of Flynn's member from years of untreated venereal disease, okay? And in some twisted kind of penis envy, insisted he needed them as a teaching aid or something. Glenn said absolutely not. But while he was out of the room, said pathologist went snip, snip. And when Glenn returned, Flynn's
member
was bare and the warts stewed in a jar of formaldehyde. What's he going to do? Make a necklace out of it? See picture. Okay. Furious, Glenn then told the pathologist to put them back. And so he did, with Scotch tape. Yeah, that's the story. Errol would have laughed his ass off. Probably would have. Okay. He was 50 years old when he died of a massive heart attack. Went skidding into his grave. He's buried at the Glendale, Forest Lawn, Glendale. Ironically, not too far from Walt Disney. He's about as far from Walt Disney as we can get, but he's buried not too far, right over there by the Freedom Mausoleum. A lot of people like to leave little booze bottles there. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's the story of Errol Flynn. It's in my book, Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Dead. Little devil. Anyway, that does it for this week's Tragic Star. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe and do all the things. And if you made it this far, you're the best in the whole world. Please let me know down below what you think of Errol Flynn. If you've ever seen any of his movies, if you've ever seen him at all, even just a picture. If you've ever heard the term "in like Flynn," that comes from Errol Flynn. Let me know. Okay. I will see you guys next week.